Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to season 2 of Beyond the White Noise Paranormal Videocast. And tonight, starting season 2, we have the one, the only, the Ouija, my apologies, board guru, Robert Murch, otherwise known as Murch to his friends. Okay, Murch is the chairman for the Historical Board Society. Also, he has been part of Hasbro Winning Moves, also has been seen on or been behind the scenes on Rizzoli and Isles, A&E Storage Wars, Paranormal State, Mysteries of the Museum, which I one of my favorite shows, Ghost Adventures, Penn and Teller's Bullshit on I think Showtime, Smithsonian, Million Dollar Invention, and CBS Sunday Morning. And I know for a fact that's probably only a small smidgen of what Robert or what Murch, my apology, has been doing. Murch, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's busy. It's a busy time. The Ouija board is pretty hot right now. And so all of the things you mentioned, I've been lucky enough to consult on, and people have brought me in on these projects. And it's fun to work with paranormal TV shows to museums. So it's a fun time.
Oh no, I literally when you said that it's been great to work with paranormal shows and museums. It's like paranormal shows really interesting. Museums, it's just other than we might have something historical. I'm like,
Yeah, no,
okay,
you'd be surprised. Sometimes the museum stuff is a lot more interesting because, as you know, like on if you're doing a ghost investigation or if you're on a ghost hunt,
yes,
sometimes nothing happens. Like
oh yeah, yeah,
there's
no,
always something going on at a museum, I will tell you, and really strange people hang out in some museums. So sometimes you see scarier things in the museums than you do on a ghost hunt.
you need to see the
Yeah.
stuff in our local museum. There's this guy in our local museum. He's got these thick glasses. He's got like a goatee. Where mine's embarrassing, his one comes down to a point, and he spikes his hair to one side. And when you look at him, you think, if you are not involved in the occult, you are possibly going to be sacrificed within the occult just to help all these guys out. It was beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me.
What?
But I made up. We've got you back on. To be fair, I mean, last time we had you on, all we had was audio at the time because we were running the radio, and it seemed a little bit more impersonal than actually being able to sit here and talk to a face. So
Exactly. No, I think this is great. These are cool. I mean, this is the time we live in.
yeah,
I just have renovated my website and it's making it a lot more visual. That's just the way we live today.
yeah,
So seeing people and talking and hearing people, you know, seeing what you do,
yeah.
pretty much with me, what you see is what you get. I've been, like I said, just really lucky. In 20 years, 20 plus years, I've been able to work with some really cool, good people who have a variety of different beliefs in the Ouija board, from, diehard, this is a doorway that opens the demonic, to people who just feel that it's just your ideomotor response. It's your subconscious that's working them. So you never really know. In each project, you get to experience something new. I'm still learning stuff, and the Ouija board's history we've been recently able to just completely rewrite. Because
What?
Yeah.
we keep covering more and more.
Okay. One question for you, as our watchers don't know, that you have a collection above and beyond what the Smithsonian Institution could smile at. And we were talking as we discussed before the show. We had a pre-show discussion. You're up not necessarily with the Ouija board, but you have talking boards and you have things that are all similar. How many do you actually have?
Well, so I have over 500 different boards. If you count different, they look completely different. If you get into variations, as some of those boards changed over the years, you get into the thousands. And it makes people laugh. But just recently, I'm still recovering from back surgery that I had. So I had some friends come over, and we cleaned out my office, which I'm sitting in now, and we removed 25 huge bins of Ouija boards, and they all went into storage because they've been photographed and cataloged, and so now they're in a secure storage place, and I now have room to be able to do this. So I have a lot of boards, but I don't just collect the boards. I also collect everything around Ouija and talking boards. So it lets me get a really as to how people in different areas viewed these boards in every decade. So, for instance, we have someone from the UK, very different view, and the Ouija board has done and seen differently at different times where the UK as opposed to the US. And so I try to view all of it so that when I'm working on a project, if it's Canada or Mexico or London, I can help them portray the Ouija board in a way that is true for them.
Right, that's it. One thing I've got to say, because you just mentioned you got like more boards than you've got bricks in your house. I've bumped into, I've spoken to many people with regards to Ouija boards, and every single person has their own little different interpretation of what they believe goes on with the Ouija board. Some believe it's amazing, some believe it's demonic, some believe it's a portal to hell, other people believe it's just a plank of wood. Now, every single person's convinced to hellbent that Ouija boards end up being an attached device where something hangs from it, or a piece of a spirit may hang from it, right? What's it feel like having over 500 bleeding spirits living around you in that situation? I don't get it. I mean, what's your take on it?
I always tell people, because I have so many boards and so many things in my house. As I look around my office, are the original photographs of all the people who were involved in the Ouija board's inception. And so everything about this house, when I look around, has to do with the Ouija board. And I still maintain that the scariest things in our house are the people who live in it, not the stuff. So, my husband and I will far scare the hell out of you way before the boards will. No, I think belief and what you take to it is always what happens. So, do I believe that the Ouija or talking board opens a doorway to the other side? Yes, I do. But that doorway is inside of you. Like this board I'm going to show you right here. This is just like a piece of wood, right? Like it's just a piece of
How
wood. There's
how
nothing
old how old is
really.
that? What you're holding up, Murch?
So this is like around 1900, 1901.
Okay.
That's
And and
amazing, that.
and so this is that's just a piece of wood with numbers and letters on it.
Yeah.
But if you believe that this can open something up, then the door that gets opened up is inside of you. So people forget that you're communicating with something. It's you and your subconscious, you
Yeah.
and a friend, you maybe telepathy, or you and your subconscious, or you and something else beyond that. All of those things are possible. So, because your belief is what makes that happen, the doorway is inside of you, not the board
Indeed.
itself. Well, that's
Indeed.
my belief.
Now, no, I'm happy with that as a belief, to be fair. I mean, I've seen what Penn and Teller done with Penn and Teller bullshit.
Yeah.
And the first thing they done was, they done, if you remember correctly, they literally, they didn't look at it with an open mind. And that's what a lot of skeptics do. They don't look at something with an open mind. What they'll do is they'll look at it with a closed mind and say, that's a plank of wood, there's a load of people holding it. No, I'm not going to lie to you. This time in 2013, yeah, it was 2013. I was at a seance, which they had a table and they were doing table tipping, and it was the same
Yeah.
situation, like fingers on the table. And I just pointed to them and went, bullshit. No, bullshit. What you're doing is bullshit. You could see the fingers dragging on the table. I'm like, no, you are. Yeah, it's bullshit. And I didn't make many friends that night. I made more enemies than friends with regards to that one. So I was a bit slightly disappointed with myself. But in the same breath, you do get a lot of people who will literally just say bullshit, nothing more. Now, you say you worked with Penn and Teller. In all honesty, did they actually look at it from both sides, or did they just take it from one
I,
approach?
my feeling on it was we were filmed separate than both Penn and Teller, so I didn't
Ah,
talk to them at all until after. And they didn't tell us, to be fair, what they were filming. They told us they were just filming something about the Ouija board, and that was okay. A lot of people say, "Oh, were you mad at how they depicted you or your friends?" No, at the time I made a board called Cryptique. It was a spirit board from Salem, Massachusetts, and because of Penn and Teller, I say thank you to them all the time. We were able
yeah,
to get into Toys R Us and Amazon.com, and we made a lot of money off of that appearance. So, as
ah,
much as like
yeah,
so, and that their critique of critique, their tagline went viral, and it was Cryptique, the perfect blend of death and the mall. And I just thought, you know what, like I'm gonna ride that into the ground. So we made
Yeah.
Critique from 1999 to 2005, and we did very well. And they were the beginning of it. So no, I don't think they went into it with an open mind, but they were certainly helpful to us, and they were great.
What
I haven't
wasn't
had
Cryptique? Wasn't Cryptique Christian Days group?
so Christian Day is a good friend of mine, and
Yeah.
he was one of the graphic artists behind it. He created our website and revised Critique, and Debbie Norris was the original artist behind it. I kind of went to them with an idea about what I wanted to do, and it was a test, really.
Okay.
It was to show people, what if we give them what they want? What if we don't use a glow in the dark board? What if we give them something creepy? What if we call it a spirit board and we say that they're basically buying a piece of Salem where the witches were
Yes.
hung and killed, and it took off, and I think it was a real lesson to other talking board makers, that they really wanted to see something a little darker, and
Yeah.
that's
But yeah, and it's interesting though how you came out with your own brand of it, and I think that's the most interesting part of it. And initially, I mean, with and I'm trying to think with people that have a fear, and some people do actually have a true fear of the Ouija board or the talking board or the spirit board, whatever you want to call it. Did you ever face any backlash because of that?
I've been again incredibly lucky, and I think because I've always approached the Ouija board from the historical researching angle, that I have a very open mind. I mean, I'm tracking people's stories and what we call Ouija stations or urban legends that
Okay.
surround the board, as well as its history. So I'm not trying to tell people what they should or shouldn't believe. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to change anyone's mind. I just really want to educate them to
Yeah.
how, the talking board was born out of the spiritualist movement in the mid 1800s, and the talking board first comes about in 1886, and then Ouija gets its name in 1890 and is mass produced and has become a foundation in, the fabric of our pop culture. And so
Yeah.
it's now most people's first experience with the paranormal. And so there are very few things that tie generations together. And so in a world where people are playing with their iPads and they're tapping and they're swiping and they're doing all this stuff, they're still placing their hands on the planchette, which is why, the movie that Hasbro and Universal did, and I was lucky enough to, play a small part in consulting on, did so well. It did surprisingly well, and that's because people still want to know what happens when you die. And
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
what if something as simple as a board with letters and numbers on it when you place your hands on it? What if that really lets you talk to someone you didn't get to say goodbye to?
Got it.
And
Well,
that hasn't changed.
one thing I have to, it's in the back of my mind, and I've been meaning to ask you from the last time we had the show on.
Sure.
When you get situations like it's the new groups, and the first thing they do is they grab a Ouija board or they laminate something they get off the internet and grab a glass and slam it down, right? Would you go as far as saying that because they have no idea what they're looking for or no idea what target they're aiming for, that they're actually putting themselves at a risk?
Well, I did a really, really long interview, and I always go back to this because it was a fantastic experience for me. It was like a 5 or 6 hour interview with Lorraine Warren, who is kind of,
Mm-hmm.
the godmother of paranormal. And she really, really talked about her beliefs as far as the Ouija board, and we know she doesn't like them. But her and I both agreed on this one thing, which is, you know, when you call something, you're conjuring something. You're calling something that you don't know what it can and can't do to you, to talk to you. So she believes, like I do, you're in as much danger with a K2 meter or tarot cards or crystal balls or EVP recorders as you are with a Ouija board. So
Oh yeah.
anytime you're asking something to come through and speak with you,
Yeah.
it's kind of like talking to someone on the train. You don't know who they really are. You don't know what you're really, even if you're just talking with your subconscious, it's
Yes.
potentially still dangerous because we don't know. The mind builds these incredible walls to protect you out of self-defense, and if you start kind of sneaking around them, potentially you get some interesting stuff, and then other times you get some scary things. So I think it's yes, there's potential risk, but is it risk worth taking? Well, it's kind of like saying, um, if I walk across the street, I might get hit by a car. So, I look both
Yeah.
ways and I run across the street and mostly haven't really, been hit by a car yet, but I'm still going to do it. And I think, people
I
are
was gonna
always
say
going
you're
to play.
incredibly successful at that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I've been really good. But people have been trying this stuff, talking to the dead since people have been dying, since people realized, okay, they die and they go away. I still want to talk to them, and I don't think, if you look at hard numbers and hard facts, the number of bad things that happen with the Ouija board, if we could do really like if we really looked at the numbers, are so small and insignificant to compared to the number of Ouija boards. So we'll just throw out a number, and I only know this because it's the few numbers that Hasbro has ever thrown out, and that's been that from 1967, when Parker Brothers took over manufacturing the Ouija board, to 2004, 13 million Ouija boards were made. 13 million. So
Okay.
imagine 1890 to 2015. I mean, you're getting into the hundreds of millions. How many cases have you really heard that where something horrible happened? That was definitive, not
It's
just my cousin's grandmother's next door neighbor's best friend told me that.
it's modern. It's a modern day thing that's going on, because even if you go back to the Victorians with seances and the use of the Ouija board or the talking board, there was no fear, there was no thought of opening a portal or a demonic infestation that's going to take place. It was not. It was aimed at that, or the psychic was taking you out of all your money. But the idea of it though was, it's a modern day issue, I think, going on with the fear. And I know people have had um basically experiences. Some could have been negative, we all, have that. But at the same time, I think what's killing it is actually social media, is a lot of these television shows that are out now, whether they're movies, whether they're TV shows, whether it's a show called, let's say, A Haunting. Did your son play with the Ouija board? And that's the
Yes.
first thing they ask. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you got to be effing kidding me. It's a modern day phenomenon about this fear. And people will argue to the death why it's demonic, why it opens portals. And I'm like, prove it. Show me a true scientific paper out of Harvard that somehow got sponsored with some sort of money coming from somewhere, that Ouija boards or talking boards open portals. And
Yeah.
I say BS to that, because it's a superstitious thing of mine. It's a
Hmm.
fear. It becomes a fear factor thing for some people
Yeah.
because they see it on TV, or they had a friend that had a bad experience. And that's my rant. I'm sorry, Murch. I like to rant
No,
sometimes.
no, no.
But but go ahead.
I think you're expressing what I've heard. So what you're saying isn't new. But well, let's go back a little bit to the 1800s, and in the United States, where the talking board comes from, we experienced a civil war, which was massive death. And in that time, everyone was affected. Everyone lost a brother, a father, a grandfather, an uncle, a
Hmm.
son, a grandson. It
Yeah.
touched everyone. And you're talking about a time when the death rate was extremely high. So you might have 12 children and you lose six. And you take pictures of those dead children with your live ones and put them on your wall because you wanted to remember them. And so
Yes.
death was much more in your face. Not that it was any easier. I don't think it's ever easy to lose people you love, but it was much more. It happened to you much more frequently. And so today we push death far away. We don't even want to look old. We have plastic surgery. We are living much longer. We have healthier lifestyles. We have medicine, all of those things. We don't let children go to funerals because we don't want them to experience it. We protect them. And the first boxes in 1890 that made the Ouija board have little children sitting at the table there.
Yeah.
That they were not protected the way we protect them from death. And so when people say children shouldn't be playing with them, children have been playing with, and Ouija boards have been in sale in toy stores since their inception, since Ouija was born in 1890. So continuously sold in toy stores. And I think what's really happened is the shift is not that we feel that death is harder. We still want to say goodbye. We still want that one more chance. We still want to know what happened, but we're less comfortable with it. And when you're less comfortable, there's more fear. And when there's fear, all kinds of things are born. And the Ouija board really does and can bring out those fears. And so I always say that the Ouija board is this great mirror, right? It reflects people's wildest dreams and their, darkest fears. And sometimes both come out and sometimes one or the other. But, again, it's something that's been around, since the 1886, the talking board, but before that many different types of spirit communication devices. And what's really interesting, we were talking about this earlier, is it's born out of the spiritualist movement. So
Yeah.
what does that mean? Who were spiritualists? Well, they were paranormal investigators. So, today we got this new fancy name, paranormal investigator. And they used to be spiritualists. And they're the ones who came up with and were using these talking boards, but they turned their backs on them. And it happens real early. And that's because, up until then, if you really wanted to have a seance, you had to hire a medium. Maybe go visit the medium
Hmm.
and show up at their house and have them conduct a seance. But suddenly, for $1, $1.50, you get to have a seance in your house as many times as you want, for as long as you want, and you're in charge. So who gets hurt? Well, the mediums. So all of a sudden, the mediums are feeling they're getting hit in the pocketbook. They're not getting as much. So what do? They come out against these talking boards and say, these things are dangerous. These things are evil. You're in unknown territory, and you need me, who's experienced in this, to guide through this unseen land, and I can protect you. And so immediately the shift, even though these devices were in, this was the toolbox, this was a go-to thing for early spiritualists or paranormal investigators, to kind of being something they're coming out against immediately. And that's because, again, it's hitting them where it matters, which is their pocketbook. And it's funny, we still hear some of these things today. And I'm not saying that demonic possession is impossible. I'm not saying that you can't get a bad ghost. And there were a segment of the population against talking boards right from the beginning. A lot of people didn't think talking to the dead was such a great idea. The difference is it wasn't the overwhelming public. So today, because of many different factors, people have this fear of the boards. And again, it's very localized. It depends on where you are. People in Europe have a different take and feeling about the
I,
Ouija board
I,
than people in the US
yeah.
and
Can I?
Australia.
Okay, I don't mean to talk over you, but can I interject on that?
Sure.
I'm piggybacking on what you were saying, Murch. From what I've learned, and this is from Mo and his crew, and from other people that we were once tied into with the old show, um, they tended to use they kind of went to the Ouija board, whereas it seems like America, they kind of, and I mean, I know, so they tend to shy away from it, and I and,
Mhm.
and I kind of find that interesting, the differences in cultures that are almost so close together in a sense, but
Oh
at the
yeah.
same time, just divided by a dirty pond of water. Basically that's it. But I see that
It's
with
dirty your side, it's clean our side. There's two of you, there's only one of me. I remember that.
Well, I think, again, cultures evolve differently with spirit communication, and timing is everything. So when Parker Brothers bought the Ouija board from William Fold, who made the Ouija board, him as part of another company, and then on his own from 1890 to 1966, when Parker Brothers buys it and moves it to Salem, the Witch City, they expand it and want to take it worldwide. So they decide we're going to leverage our partners in Australia, in London, in Paris, in Canada, all over. And it was met with different results. To the people in Australia, it lasted 2 years. And then it just culturally having a game that's thought to talk to spirits wasn't acceptable. It was just like, we believe you call on spirits and talk to them, but that's not a game. And in London, it did well in the UK in the beginning,
Hmm.
in Paris as well, but then it kind of fell off because the novelty just wore off to them. They had been through many different spiritualist movements before, and so the Ouija board kind of did its thing, and it kind of fell off a little bit. And in the United States, because Ouija is still a trademark. That is owned currently by Hasbro. So Ouija, we'll backtrack a little bit, is a trademark that's been in constant use since 1890, and is currently owned by Hasbro, and they're the ones who make it. So today we have different versions of it. We have Winning Moves makes an amazing classic version, which is a throwback to the 90s, and USAopoly did the Supernatural show version brand of it that came out, and then we have Hasbro's version. We also have one that's made in Canada from the Canadian group, and then there's a licensed version of it, glow in the dark version in Argentina. So,
I've
Ouija as a brand is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I've used the glow in the dark. That's a fun one actually. Because it's kind of like a different. You're sitting there and you're going, because everybody does the candle bit, and I mean that's the traditional way of doing it. And but the glow in the dark's cool because you don't have to mess with that. It just you can
Yeah.
see it right there in this. But I'm gonna uh, this is kind of a loaded question, and I think you answered this last time we had you
Uh-oh.
on. But and um and I'm gonna go to Zozo.
Sure.
I I so disagreed with that. I couldn't even watch half of it. I'm like, that to me is television selling the board as being purely evil. Because I remember I made a mention to you. I get XOXO, so I'm getting like the store brand demon. Not the Lucky Charms, but the store brand version. I get that. I'm like,
Yeah.
why can't I get a real thing coming through? But a TV does, I think, more damage to the history of the board, to the to the use of the board than anything else. They look at it as it is the most evil thing in life, but then they'll turn around, and I'm not going to mention names or shows in this because we've all seen it on all of them. They'll go out to, let's say, an asylum and sit there and provoke and try to get some EVP on a recorder. And I'm going, dude, you're doing the same exact thing, but in a different method. You
Hmm.
try to aim your EVPs specifically for certain people, but they always start, who's here with me? Is there anybody here with me?
Hmm.
That seems to be just a traditional thing everybody says. That's kind of like the Ouija board. Who's here? And
Right.
and, and so therefore it's like the same thing, but just different time era. I mean,
Right.
what's your take on that?
Well, yeah. So, I remember many, many years ago, Jeff Belanger. I'm sure you guys have heard of
Yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah. We know.
Really, really,
Yeah,
a really
good buddy
small
of
guy
yours.
in the field. Yeah, no, he's a great guy, and right, he's been on everything as well as he should.
Yeah.
He got me my first gig on speaking at one of the Beyond Reality events. It was the Ghost Hunters were putting it on, and they were doing their own Beyond Reality events. And Amy Bruni was the person who kind of took a chance on me. And I was sat down and spoke to by Jason and Grant, and they were like, "Hey, you can't bring any boards here. Like we just we don't like them. They're bad mojo. They freak people out. You can come talk about it, but then you got to go. Like you can't bring your stuff here." And then it was like, okay, the next year you can come back. You can stay and bring some boards. And people would literally walk around the table of these antique boards as far away against the wall as they could. Just like I don't even like I might catch something. I was contagious, and then we actually were eventually able to bring boards and actually play them. But what struck me, and it kind of happened at one of these things, we were doing a ghost hunt after we got pulled into the room, Jeff and I, and explained why we couldn't use the Ouija board by Jason and Grant. Then they're leading a ghost hunt, and Jason says, "Is there anyone here? Are there any messages for us?"
There
You
you
know, and,
go.
and, and, and Jeff hits me and says, isn't this an effing Ouija board session? And so it struck me as, oh, okay, like I get it. Now this is, 10, 15 years ago. It hit me,
Mhm.
okay, like I understand it. So what's making this different is people's belief. So to me, and this is just my personal belief, if a K2 meter, if you can put a K2 meter down and you ask it a question and it blinks and answers, if something, I can't make it blink on command, right? But if something else can, and why can't it then pick it up and throw it at your head? Like I don't know what I'm dealing with. So is it more dangerous? In other words, does Casper the Friendly Ghost didn't give me his rule book? He didn't say, okay, if you use a K2 meter or an EVP, recorder, I can't get you. You put your hands on a planchette and you're mine. Like no, like I personally, logically, but this is where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because if you believe it's different, it is different. The power of the mind is an amazing, amazing thing. People who don't believe in ghosts, people who don't believe in an afterlife, people who don't believe there's anything else out there don't have experiences. Now, is it because there's nothing to experience, or do they just turn everything off? Like, I don't hear, see, smell, touch. I just don't
Yeah.
believe in it. There's always a rational reason. For people who believe, you're opening up that thing. So I don't mind, and I had a wonderful time. So I think the episode you were talking about was I was asked to show up on season 10, an episode in season 10 of Ghost Adventures with those guys who are really, really good guys, and they wanted to investigate something that is very primal to the Ouija board modern stories, and that's Zozo. And so I collect all the stories about Zozo and what people believe. And because belief is 9/10 of your reality, the Ouija
Yeah.
board has two lives that run parallel. Like it's historical and true, and we can prove it. And then there's what people believe, and they're both equally important. And so the Ouija board has a reputation to maintain. And I don't mind that some people believe it's evil or that when it's portrayed that way, because that's just one belief. And I think without it, I mean, why do kids play it today? Because they're told not to. Because it's dangerous. Because I mean, you remember when we were all younger and our parents said, "Don't do something." What's the first thing you did? You went and did it.
Did it?
And so, right, and so the Zozo thing that they were really nice. They asked me to come on and flew me out there, and I talked about what I know about that Zozo and what people believe and what happens, and then they investigated with Darren Evans, who again believes that his life was negatively infected by this demon. Do I know that that's true or happened? I know he believes it, and I was there, and really weird stuff happened, and I,
Yeah.
you know, I know it's hard to believe that we see things and they're edited. Of course, it's
Mhm.
television. There has
This
to be
is
an entertainment
yeah.
value. But I will tell you, I know those guys, and I was there, and every weird thing you saw happened. Like it was not. I mean, I'm sitting there. I would tell you, they know me very well. Yeah, Zach, Nick, Aaron, especially Nick knows I won't be part of anything that's not true. So
That's
nothing that you saw, they wouldn't have invited me on because they know I bullshit. I would just call
Yeah.
it. And so it was a bizarre episode. It was really weird. And I liked it though. I mean, again, I don't mind that it's portrayed. Again, like I said, the Ouija board has a reputation to maintain, and the belief that there is the possibility you can reach the demonic with it, it exists. People do believe that, and so I don't care.
do you
As
th-
long as people are talking about it,
yeah,
it's
I mean,
to teach the history.
yeah, the history of it, but both in both sides if you think about it. And this goes back to something I remember when we had Dr. Kieran O'Keefe on. And
He's
we're talking about pure skeptics versus people that believe in the demonic. Neither side seems to budge. There's no, as you were just saying, there's no open dialogue that will ever go on because each side is so staunch in their belief systems. It's almost like religion in a sense,
Yeah.
like Islam versus, let's say, Christianity. I mean, it just, it's so, I mean, there's got to be some sort of dialogue,
Mhm.
and and I'm hard headed. I don't like to open my mind. I like to find rational reason for things. Yes, I've had things happen to me that I cannot explain away. But there's always, I've come to the conclusion at 46 years old that there is not being religious at all, really, just an agnostic, all borderline. But there's that small gray area where things do occur that
Hmm.
you can't explain, and I don't call it
Right.
paranormal. I'm at the I'm at the point now when something does happen, because I do work in a museum that built in 1815 that has a reputable, supposed reputable haunt, and every once in a blue moon something happens and you just shake your head going, was that in my head or was that
Mhm.
there? So I know there's a gray area, but these people will not get together, and
Well, a lot of people asked, so if you saw the movie Ouija that came out last year, a lot of people said, well, were you upset because it portrayed the Ouija board in a bad light, that it showed, kind of evil spirits? And I said, no, absolutely. I was really excited because
uh-huh.
it expressed what people believe. So, having a movie come out that's basically all about the Ouija board and how people use it, and from the people who make it as well as Universal, it was awesome to be part of. And I liked that they portrayed and they kept it specific to its roots, which were spirits, as opposed to contacting demons. So I thought, that was a neat way to keep it, kind of evil spirit versus demons. Because as we've seen in the paranormal world, that's what's happened, right? Like ghosts were really big until they weren't scary and everyone got used to them. And so then they had to up the ante, and then every noise became a demon. And okay, well, oh, we need a demon because it's not as big and scary. So I was kind of happy with how they did it. And one of the things I was really excited about with the movie Ouija was that the movie cost $5 million to make. So
Okay.
super small budget, very small. Before the DVD and Blu-ray released, it made $100 million worldwide. $100 million. So a movie that cost almost nothing to make, because the Ouija board connects everybody. So not just the living and the dead, but also the living. People really want to have that experience. And so, you know, I thanked them for bringing an entire generation to the board who might not normally have done it. The younger people, are they playing the Ouija board and while they're tapping and swiping and using their, digital devices? Well, suddenly everyone's back at the board. And so 125 years later, the Ouija board is as popular as ever.
Do you
And
know
that's great.
the one thing I find really positive with regards to the Ouija board is you look at it yourself 125 years down the line now, right? So 125 years has passed. Since then, we've had the skull experiment, the Enfield poltergeist, we've had the evolution of tape recorders, the Rode Bay microphone, then we've got K2 meters, Ovulus, REM pods, every piece of equipment that's come out, right? And most of them have seen 10, 15 years. The skull experiment used 35mm film and has never been really properly replicated. So that I'm not sure of. But nevertheless, the amount of components, the amount of electrical equipment used, and the amount of equipment full stop used with regards to the paranormal, the only thing that seems to be holding its weight and still throwing punches 125 years later is the Ouija board, which I know you're doing that. Yeah, you've got that like very
That's great.
proud tap on your head, but you've been. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna. If I could say, I'm gonna speak to not speak to a Ouija board with a planchette, but speak to a Ouija board and interview technically. Imagine interviewing a Ouija board, right? And I could say to you, right, you've been dragged across the coals by religion. Fact.
Mhm.
Would you go as far as saying if you were to respond for it, would you say yes, I have, but it's helped me, or no, I haven't, or where would you stand on that?
I think the Ouija board is still popular for so many reasons, and they all happened at once. One talking board start 4 years before and kind of take off and then go down, and then Ouija gets branded. All of a sudden, it gets a name and a story, the Egyptian luck board,
Yeah,
and suddenly it's mass marketed, and it hits a time when things can be marketed by the thousands. So, like, just if we look at how popular the Ouija board went and how it's interacted with religion over time, so it goes within 2 to 3 years from one small factory in Baltimore to two factories in Baltimore, two factories in New York, three factories in Chicago, and a factory in the UK, all within 3 years. So
Wow.
again, boom. They go everywhere. And does some religions immediately come out against it? Some of them, it takes a long time to really say the Ouija board is something that's evil. As we know, The Exorcist, where The Exorcist is kind of that line in the sand for the Ouija board where
Yeah.
things were tipping. So in every fad, we see a pendulum swing, right? So the pendulum was starting to swing already to the
Yeah.
Ouija board looking a little more dark and a little more evil.
And
And if we look at the movies leading up to it, before it's just a joke and people are using it to be funny. Are you married? Do you like me? That kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden you get to like the 40s and it starts to get like it's starting to tell you who's the bad guy. Who's the
Yeah.
one who's the murderer? It's starting to give initials. Then, we have the original 13 ghosts, and it's basically the board's telling them there's 13 ghosts and someone's going to die. And then we get to The Exorcist, which brilliantly and very quietly and smallly starts to imply that using the Ouija board by yourself opened this girl up for demonic possession.
Captain
And so
Howdy, yeah, Captain Howdy.
exactly. And so, it's not that it happens immediately, but if we look back, that seems to be what other studios and media start to use. They're like, okay, wow, that was great. The movie scared the hell out of America and other countries all over the world. And so, yeah, the Ouija board was a great way to show demonic possession. And so people started copying it. So the pendulum was already swinging. So I don't think The Exorcist, changed everything, but it happened right at the right time. Like if we look backwards, it just the scale went like this. And so, today religion, I think it's hard to pull The Exorcist apart from religious beliefs because it was religious demonic possession.
Yeah.
It was very clearly. So all we do know is that Parker Brothers said at the time their sales went through the roof after The Exorcist.
Yes, I can't
So
imagine.
so would I say that if I was the Ouija board, that people's belief that there's potentially danger and demonic possession there? Yeah, of course it's helped it as much as it hurts it. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't exist today without it, and it's part of the story. There's no way, there's no way to pull it apart. The Mystifying Oracle is still causing this debate, like you said, 125 years later, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And Mo, by the way,
Yeah.
you are getting this. I don't care. I'm paying customs tax. You don't know when you're getting it. You don't know what it's going to be wrapped up in, but you
But
are
it's coming.
getting this. You can look at
Yeah.
your CCTV all you want. You're just going to see a hooded figure leave it at your door, and it's going to have some sort of juju put on it. So that way I make sure that I pass it on from the US to the UK with love, right,
Yeah.
dude? Yeah, so this is coming your way, dude. Don't think it won't. Okay.
Right, Robert,
I had to get that out of my system.
I don't blame you. Just so you're fully aware of what Kurt means, right? My family are all strict, old school Irish Catholic. And by old school Irish Catholic, do you ever remember that film by M. Night Shyamalan, whatever his name is, The Village?
Yes,
Yes.
great movie. Actually, that was a good movie. Yeah.
It was
That's
a brilliant movie. The scary thing in the woods, and basically what it was this religious sect that sat itself to one side and instilled the people that something bad was there. Now, my family, from when I grew up, I was informed from day spot, don't you dare touch a Ouija board. If you touch a Ouija board, then you might as well get a fast pass to hell. That's it. Now, I'm not saying my family are heavily religious, but that's just the way it was. That's the way it is for a lot of Catholic families,
right.
especially old school Irish Catholics. They're really negative towards it. Now, personally, if that's the case, I've already well signed my fast track to hell because I've been to enough places with enough stupid pieces of equipment in the past to seal my deal. I'm done if that's the case. But in all honesty, where the Ouija board's concerned, up to a few years ago, I'd say up to 2 years ago, if somebody got a Ouija board out in a room, I'd go, do you know what you're doing? And then maybe 18 months ago, I sat there and thought the same as you. Well, what's the difference between that and using something else like an ovulus, for instance, which again I'm not really a big fan of, but using those pieces of equipment which are literally like throwing stones into the darkness and waiting for someone to throw something back to you. You don't know what's there, you just know something's coming back.
Well, to piggyback on what you were saying, Mo, if you look at, and I don't want to go too far off the topic of Ouija boards, but I do want to compare this to the talking board. Is let's say something like the Echo Vox, that's even though we've already debunked that one 100,000 times over on the show. Um, it's kind of doing the same thing. It's digitizing.
It's
It's
not. It's not. There's input involved with the Ouija board. Somebody's actually got input with the Echo Box and certain apps like that. It's totally and utterly randomized. There's nothing behind it. There's no intelligence whatsoever. I would actually go as far as saying that I would put my foot through my phone and buy a Ouija board tomorrow if I had to choose. 100%. I would rather smash my brand new phone up
Well,
than make that mistake.
that's kind of
nice.
so the whole goal of this Talking Board Historical Society that we founded, which is an actual nonprofit. So we have tax exempt status in the U.S., which is hard to get, but we go around trying to preserve its history and do just what we're talking about now. Have people understand that this is a huge part of the paranormal community's history. And there's no denying that this is something that this is where it all starts. And so yeah, there's just a lot of fun, like we were having all these different things and the different stuff that people like, and it's just really cool. And we just celebrated WouijaCon, right? So
Hmm.
it was 125 years of since its naming, and that happened right in Baltimore. And as we know, Kurt is from Maryland, so
Hmm.
not far from him. Uh, the mayor issued a proclamation making April 25th of 2015 Ouija Board Day in Baltimore,
I like it.
and we put up a plaque that was really celebrates and tells the story of how the Ouija board got its name in that building. So, one of the projects we're doing right now is we're putting a gravestone in for Helen Peters, the woman who named the Ouija board, and that's she's actually buried in Denver and doesn't have a gravestone. So we work with that
Oh,
family,
wow.
Is that
and
it?
so people.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. We've done it in the past. So under projects, if you scroll down back to that thing that you were showing everybody,
Which one?
you'll see if you go back to under projects, you'll see that we put in a gravestone already for Elijah Bond. Should be down at the bottom, and you'll see us with a gravestone that looks like a Ouija board, and that is the
Oh,
man.
that's so cool.
Yeah, so that's the guy who Elijah Bond, who patented the Ouija board, and he was buried in an unmarked grave, and it took a lot of years to find it. And we had everyone donate, and we put in a stone that says patentee of the Ouija board, and it's his drawing from the patent of the Ouija board on the back. And so,
What what cemetery is that at, Murch?
so that's at Greenmount Cemetery. And for people who don't know,
In
Greenmount
Baltimore,
Cemetery
yeah.
is in Baltimore and has many, many, many famous people buried there, including John Wilkes Booth, the man who
Yeah.
killed Abraham Lincoln.
Hmm.
And so up till we put this gravestone in, he was the #1 visited gravestone. And since we put this gravestone in 2007, 2008, Elijah Bond is now the most requested gravestone for people to visit. And we hope to do the same thing with Helen Peters. So the TBHS is a bunch of collectors and historians all working together to do exhibits, work with local cities, put up plaques, and if you go to tbhs.org, people can donate. We're going to open it up to membership in October. So we hope to do a lot of great things.
Yeah, I'll donate my money for that. That actually for another hit for this, I'm just like like a giddy little school kid right now. But
Can I ask you a question, Robert? I've just noticed something there, right? I'm going to point it out.
Sure.
Is this your collection?
So those boards that you see in there, some of them are mine and some of them are not. So you can point out each
Right.
one, I'll tell you.
Can I point out that right there?
Absolutely. Now, you tell me, you see that,
it's not
especially
crooked
being
though.
in
It's not
Europe.
crooked.
Exactly. What
It's
year do you
Christian, isn't
think
it?
that's from? What year would you guess that board is from?
I probably from I'd say way back because that was
I'd say
actually a magic sign. It meant like some sort of
1890s, I'd say.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually 1907, and Elijah Bond, who made the Ouija board, after he left the company, he waited until the patent ran out, and he
Yeah.
came up with another board called their Nirvana board, and that he used the swastika, which the swastika was, right, like you said, a symbol of power, a symbol of mystery and good luck. And so, unfortunate for him, that symbol was later taken by the Nazis and twisted and
Hmm.
made something horrible. But with the great thing about these talking boards, or if you look at all of those different boards, they use different symbols and different things, whatever was seen as mystical or magical at the time. So when Ouija came about in the 1890s, they thought Egypt was what was mystical and magical, and later on, as you get into the 20s and the 40s, India and swamis, all kinds of things.
Have you ever had, and this is, and this kind of ties into this. I mean, have you ever had personally a dark experience that you can speak of using the board, or is it just kind of
Never.
like, well, supposedly it said I was going to get killed, which I had that happen one time. I
Okay.
laughed.
So
But
so
have you had? Go ahead.
I haven't, but I'll tell you a story, and I ask this I tell this story quite a bit, and this happened at WouijaCon. This woman came up to me and said, "Look, I'm really glad we're at WouijaCon and we're learning all about the Ouija board because I had a horrible experience with it, terrible. Like it affects me today." And I was like, "Okay, I want to hear more. Tell me about this." And she said, "We were playing with the Ouija board, and the Ouija board told me how and when I was going to die." And I said, "Well, that's really specific. What were you asking the Ouija board when this happened?" And she said, "Well, we asked the Ouija board how and when I was going to die." And we all start laughing. And I said to her, "Well, my mother always says to me, don't ask a question you don't want an answer to. So when people say to me, what kind of questions should you ask the Ouija board? Ask for the lottery numbers. Are you insane? Like,
Yeah.
I want to be,
Go.
I don't want to know how I'm going to die. I want to be like super rich." So, it hasn't given to me. I have asked, and just hasn't happened. But, I mean, it's my advice to people who play the Ouija board, regardless of your belief system. I will tell you this: the more people who are playing it at once, the better it works. So for those who are new at it, if they've never really done it and they have a hard time getting it to work, get like 4 or 5 people. That tends to work better in the beginning, and then you can start peeling off people. Other times, if you just do it with one other person, change partners, because sometimes it's just the mix between the two people. If you get two people who just they're pushing so hard that the planchette is like poking through the board, it's not going to work. So I tell people this all the time: it doesn't move on its own. It happens in Hollywood all the time. I have never experienced the planchette moving by itself. It needs your
I.
eyes, it needs your hands. It's you're all part of it. Like Mo had said before,
Uh
with
huh.
the Ouija board, you're part of the input. Like, you have to have your hands on it.
Yeah.
You're part of it.
I've
And
had it.
so,
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Keep going, Murch.
no, no, no. It's so you have to put your hands on it. And if for people who want to use it, come up with your questions ahead of time. So come up with 10 questions, because what I see happen all the time when I'm with people using them is it starts moving and they look at the people. Are you pushing it? No, are you pushing it? No, I'm not. And then they're I don't know what to ask. They're so freaked out that it's working that they can't. Their brain just goes blank. And so have your list of questions ahead of time that you're going to ask. And I tell people, like with anything, if it starts getting nasty or says bad things and starts swearing at you, and that's upsetting to you, it starts saying things that are making you feel uncomfortable, you just push it to goodbye. That's why it's there. And you stop. Like, I think remembering that you're kind of in control of what you're doing and
Yeah.
you're responsible is really important in this. So it's like any investigation. Starts to get too deep, it starts to get too heavy, take a walk outside.
Yeah. Take a breather.
Right.
Exactly.
I've got something I want to ask you.
Sure.
It's a kind of weird thing to ask, but with regards to the Ouija board, a lot of people out there, they do believe that the thing might as well drag demons from the bowels of hell. Have you ever thought of jumping on? It sounds really petty, but jumping on YouTube, right, and just knocking a few minute long video saying, "Listen, this isn't what you think it is. If I had to end it and walk away, I would say goodbye." That's something I've never heard anybody say, is that you literally take it to goodbye and say, "Goodbye, leave me alone." if needs be.
Yeah, I think like that's it. The original talking boards had good eve, good night. There
Yeah.
was always a way to sign off. I think that's one. It was part of manners at the time. Like now people just hang up the phone when they're done. They're like, "See ya." But I think the goodbye has remained because it's supposed to be how you sign off. So I mean, it's fun. It's fun for people to think. But the first text messages were sent over the Ouija board. Right? Like
Yeah.
a good friend of mine, like Mike Brody. Um, I don't know if you guys know him. He's a comedian, and he also does a lot of paranormal comedy. And one of his jokes was, and I loved it. And so I'm totally giving him credit, and I'm going to slaughter it because I'm not as funny as him. But he said, hey, you're playing the Ouija board, and how do you know if you get a new ghost or an old ghost? And you're like, I'm going to kill you, LOL. And you start to use it like so. Like like again, it's funny to me, but people who use the Ouija board, I would say again, it comes down to if you really want to get it working, start with yes or no questions. It's going to work a lot faster going to yes or no
Yeah.
than it is spelling out like, oh my God, what state are you from? Like when it starts spelling out Mississippi, you're going to wish you just asked, are you
Yeah.
from the U.S. or not?
I, as
Yeah.
as a personal thing with the board, I think psychologically speaking that certain people, due to their mental stability,
Mm-hmm.
um, might as well shouldn't do the board. Not because of anything spiritual or any demon or this or that, but they tend not to deviate. What's real, what's not real, and then that will put them in that'll make them their head spin. I mean, I like today. I read this quote on Facebook. God, I Facebook is just okay. I was advertising that you were coming on the show. All right, and I put the link and all this, the usual, off, Twitter, Facebook, and some guy goes, people using the Ouija board all across the country collectively are opening up portals. I looked at that and I'm going, oh, I want to dive into this head first, but I was like, I don't have the time, nor do I have the energy right now. But I mean, that's the kind of thought process that these people get, and it's a more modern day thought process. Going back to what you were
Right.
stating earlier, Murch, about The Exorcist with
Mm-hmm.
Captain Howdy and this and that, and yeah, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I just think people that are feeble-minded, and I'm sorry I use
Yeah.
that term, and should not or
Yeah.
become obsessed with it. People with OCD or anything like that, because psychologically, it's a mind. You can fill in the blanks from there.
Right. Yeah, no, I think, again, right, people who don't have all their right faculties, it's not a good idea. Because again, if the Ouija board is a mirror to you and it's going to kind of and it may be a magnifying glass and bring out kind of some good, really good qualities or some really bad stuff, they're not able to deal with that. And again, the subconscious and the mind is an amazing thing. And again, taking bricks out of a wall that your brain puts up to protect you can be equally dangerous and scary
Hmm.
as trying to make contact with the other side. So who's to say that ghosts are not our brain's creation, that you are not making a ghost? I mean, I don't, again, we don't, there's no firm answer to any of this stuff, but what you believe and what you experience, the people who put their hands on the planchette, ask a question and it moves, they believe something is happening. And so, when someone says portals are being opened up, yeah, I agree. When you use the Ouija board, there is something that happens to you. Now, whether that is just purely, again, in your brain, that you are opening up yourself to your subconscious, to psychic phenomenon, to talking to another entity, who knows? But, there are some interesting studies that have been done. Scientists weren't silly or stupid. From the 1850s, they knew about ideomotor response, or the belief that your subconscious can
Hmm.
actively make you do things without you knowing them, which is what people believe in with the Ouija board if they're from the scientific community. And so, it's really I don't mind people saying that they open up a portal. Something happens. You put yourself in a place. There's ritual with a Ouija board. So I think one of the reasons it's still popular, even after all of these years, 125 years, is you sit down, you light candles if you want, you set the mood, you get everyone quiet, you put your hands on the planchette, and you ask a question. And because there's ritual to it, it's there's belief. It's the same thing you mentioned it earlier. It's like religion. Believing in God and believing that there are spirits, there's no big leap between the two, right? If you believe that there is a bigger power,
Hmm.
then believing that there are something that happens to you after you die isn't that much more of a leap. Whether
Hmm.
you can contact it through the Ouija board or not, that's a whole nother discussion. But again, I think opening your mind to experiencing it, I think people who have never tried it and think it's bad and awful and evil should give it a try. I think again, we only hear the extreme cases. Like if the Ouija board tells you where you've lost your ring, it's not going to make the news. But if the Ouija board tells you to kill your daddy and you do, that's going to make the headlines. So I think
Yeah.
people, you have to take things with a grain of sand. What you're going to hear in the media is, extreme.
Yeah, the media always falsely portrays. It's the one thing I'll always say, and it was a conversation I had totally unrelated to the paranormal yesterday. I was speaking to an individual with regards to an item, like a product that you can buy. It was an
Mhm.
electrical item, and it was a quadcopter. And the person said to me, I've read nothing but bad things about it. I went, how many reviews or responses have you read? He went, three. I went, how many good ones did you read? He went, none. I went, why is that? He went, I read the negative ones. You didn't look for positives. You actively went to look for a negative. So
Right.
if you look for a negative, you'll find a negative, regardless of what
Absolutely.
situation. People I've never once heard. I'm sorry for the way this sounds, but and this is media's fault. This isn't obviously your fault or anybody who's directly or indirectly tied to the Ouija boards. I've never heard somebody say, I bought a Ouija board and it told me all these lovely things. I've never heard that. I've heard that people are trying to like
That's
contact
right.
evil, Zozo, trying to drag the devil from hell himself. And you're like, where's the good stories? They're there.
and they just don't make the news. And, that's just it. The extreme is always going to make it. So, look, the Ouija board gives me the lottery numbers, and I win. It's going to make the news. Like, and
Right. If the Ouija
I
board
will.
gives you lottery numbers and you win, then that was an amazing coincidence. That's all it'll be.
Yeah, right. But
That's
it'll
all we'll
make
say to you.
it'll make the news, and I will come back on and do an interview, and I'll fly over I'll be able to take a private jet
Yeah.
to be on location with you. So, no, the Ouija board, the only power the Ouija board has is what we give it. What's an amazing phenomenon about the Ouija board that we don't do to any other paranormal or spirit communication device is we give it this power. So we say when, there's a bad session, it's the Ouija board's fault, it's awful and evil, and we need to get it out of here. But
Yes.
so say like this, we're on the phone right now and we're doing this whole thing, and we get into a big fight, right? Like we call each other names, we threaten each other, we say horrible stuff. You hang up the phone, you don't take your iPhone, throw it out the window, and say, I'll never have another one of these in my house again. But if that happens with the Ouija board, that's the result.
Yes.
So we blame the bad communication on the Ouija board, giving it power that plastic and cardboard don't typically get.
Yeah.
And we forget that the communication is with us and something else. You and your subconscious, you and maybe telepathy, you and maybe some other entity. But it just happens to be the telephone or the tool you're using. It's just that it's been around for 125 years. And so it has a mystique. And that's
Yes.
why they call it the mystifying oracle.
Well, I'm gonna put my neck out on the line now because I know half of my team would be happy with it and the other half of my team wouldn't. I'm gonna sit there and say I'm indifferent. I'm not. I'll give it a go. I'll make one, but I'm not gonna get like a piece of paper and draw a load of numbers. I'm gonna be the pedantic bastard who gets a stencil and stencils it out in lines. I'm gonna make it look as sinister as humanly
I
possible.
can see you.
Or
I can see you doing that,
yeah,
Mo.
I might. Do you know what I might actually do? I might go into work and see if I can 3D print one.
Ooh, cool.
Yes, that's how I
I'd love to see that.
welcome to the world of
That's awesome.
technology. What I'll do is I'll do it, and on the next investigation, I'll make sure it goes with me and I film it because I've already I've toyed with the idea in the past, and it's more due to the fact that I put a lot of effort and not effort. What's the word? I put a lot of faith into electronics. We all do. We put a lot of faith into electronics. Like, just because when we sit in the house, we can watch the television to tell us a story. It's that simple. When you go out and do everything else in life, it's that easy
Yeah.
for me to pick up my phone and phone somebody, and it beats me knocking at the front door. Why not try it the hard way for once? Why not take a Ouija board somewhere and go, right, okay, let's try it the hard way and ask it, and then wait for HI space. I'll give it a go, and if it works, I'm over the moon. If it doesn't work, it's Kurt's fault.
It's always my fault, Murch. I tell you, man, kill the messenger, right? That's what everybody's doing with the Ouija board, killing the messenger.
But again, it's part of the story, and so you brought me back to this thing, and I feel this, and I truly believe it. We are very comfortable with technology, like we feel safe. So using a ghost box or using an EVP recorder or using a K2 meter, it's like, okay, this device is safe, but a Ouija board isn't. And again, you can make a K2 meter blink on your own. I can't do it. Like, I think, okay, blink, it doesn't blink. If something can do that, then you're not safe. Like but we do this because we figure, okay, well, like, my iPhone's not dangerous, my iPad's got, nothing. This is just technology. Well, if something can manipulate it, even if it's only your brain, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
The one thing I will say with regards to, and this is to back up what you've just said, if you're sitting there staring at a K2 going, is somebody there, and then the red light blinks, right? And then that's it. And then put the same situation in a parallel universe, and you're sitting there with a Ouija board in your hand, and you put, is somebody there? And it goes, I'm going to kill you. Which one's going to give you the answer that not that you're looking for? Which one's going to give you the clear answer? The board which spells an answer out for you, or the red blinking light? Unfortunately, I don't understand the blinking light system, so I'd rather go with English, to be fair. So, as weird as that sounds,
I think yeah, it's just, or I've seen people do the where they unscrew the flashlight, and they let it blink and stuff. Whatever. If something can make connections where there are no connections, it's amazing. There's something there. But it's like we play with the Ouija board because we want to believe that there's communication is possible. And again, if we go back to why people try to communicate in the first place, not as investigators, not to see what we can see or be scared. I mean, I've got friends who only come with me because they want to pee their pants. They're like, their whole goal in life is to be so scared and see something so horrifying that they pee their pants. But I'm talking about, why do people want to talk to the dead? And I think we forget this in the paranormal community, and that's, as we get older, we experience a lot more loss. And we, you're talking to your friend one day, and the next day you get a call they were killed in a car accident, and you never got to say goodbye. And maybe the last thing you ever said to someone was horrible, and you were having a bad day, and you told them to go F off. And then you find out that they died. And so you never got a chance to say, I'm sorry, and that's not what I meant. And so wanting to reach out and using something as simple as a Ouija board is just an expression of our not wanting to say goodbye, and not being comfortable with life going on without the people we want in it. And it's a really deep thing. And so the Ouija board is this really funky thing where it's a game. It's fun, but it's intertwining a lot of our core beliefs as human beings. Like, what happens to us? Does your consciousness go? Does the short time I have here on Earth mean anything, or is it just gone when it's gone? And so, that's what it's. There's not too many other things that take all of those things, put them together, and allow you to experience them. And I think, again, that it's to the Ouija board's credit, and the people who originated it and sold it as a game, as a way for us to experience death without dying. I think that's ultimately what it was about.
Well, the Victorians, and I keep going back to the Victorians. I'll skip the Edwardians because that's kind of moving forward in the future. But you're talking about kind of like the way they treat death is a lot different than the way we treat death today. Back then, like you made mention earlier of the memento mori picks, guess which one's dead. I'm always looking at that stuff. I'm going, it's that one. I see the stand behind it. It's treated so much differently as it's part of life. But now I think it's there's more of a fear of it, maybe because what's happening around the world, what's going on with this and that. But people are becoming more gullible, or I don't know. It's just
I think
interesting.
we're less comfortable with death, and we fight it very hard. And we have a lot of things, with all these medicines and all of these medical breakthroughs that we have that have extended our lives. Like I just watched this morning, a guy who's worked at Walmart for 33 years. After he retired, he's 103 years old, and
Whoa.
someone 103 years old, and people getting to 100 is not uncommon in our world,
No.
but getting to 100 in 1886, that was an act of God. This was crazy. So death was so much more part of our life. If we think about a funeral parlor, what was a funeral parlor? It was your parlor. You
Mm-hmm.
were laid out in your house, and
But
you
also,
know,
in Britain, that's still common as well.
yeah, exactly. So cultural influence in America, we have, my belief, really sterilized death, and we make everything very like, you go, they pick up the body, they take care of it, you come in, you view it, okay, we put it back, and so we don't have as much, again, experience with death. It's not that if you lost 6 children, it wasn't like, well, I lost another one. Like, that's not true. Like, no mother ever
Mm-hmm.
gets used to losing a child or parent. But I think the loss and how they dealt with it was more common, and so there was, uh, not it's not easier, it just was more. And so that now that we've just pushed everything away, and we're so technology and everything is like that, I think we just, we're not as comfortable with it. And so when you're uncomfortable with things, we get scared of them. And when you're afraid of things, that starts to come through. And the Ouija board really reflects that today. But that's also okay because, again, the Ouija board, if it didn't have some healthy fear behind it, I don't know if it would sell as well. So there has to be
No,
some
you're right.
unknown.
You are 100% right. If it didn't have people with an active positive or negative interest, I think it'd be one of those things that phases up into the distance. Like a lot of these apps, people are relying on them, and they're relying on something which they think is such a big advanced situation,
Yeah.
when all it is just which is randomized. But at least with the board, there's so many different variations, and this is a dig at the people who don't believe. There's so many different variations of a board. So how can somebody memorize? If you say, for instance, you've got, how many boards did you say?
Yeah, like a couple of thousand at this point.
Yeah, yeah. There's millions of boards out there. You've obviously got more boards than bricks in your house, as I said, and
Yeah.
it's going to get to a point where you're never going to be able to memorize the way each board is laid out. And then people are going to say to you, "Well, you just know the way the board's laid out." Sometimes people need to get away from blind skepticism.
I think people should stop using these devices as proof and more as an experience.
Yeah,
So to me, the Ouija board is an experience, and it's an experience unlike any other spirit communication tool, right? So it was born with the express idea that it should make contact with the other side. Every other
yeah,
device that's been made has today, the modern devices are kind of variations of other things. K2 meters, they're measuring, magnetic fields, and they were used for different things. Recorders, they're recording other stuff. But the Ouija board and talking boards, that's where they come from. They come from just expressly doing this. But it's not, there's no proof in any of this. People have been trying to prove that there's life beyond death, again, since people could rationally understand that someone
Yep.
died and went away. And so the Ouija board, there's no proof. There's no yes or no right or answer. It's literally just an experience. And what you take away from it can be profound, or it can be funny, or it can be scary. And so when you play and you ask it, you're just exploring your own mind, your own belief system, your own comfort level as to what you are thinking about death. And again, we'll all have that answer. Two things are sure in life, and
Mm.
that's death and taxes, and we'll
Yeah.
experience them both. And
yeah.
and in the end, we'll know what it is. The Ouija board isn't going to give us that answer. It is going to give you a very interesting experience.
can imagine totally. One thing I've got to ask you, and this is a bit of a weird question to say. It doesn't correlate to anything whatsoever that we've been talking about so far. But if you could look at say for instance, the planet and look more towards the Far East, where their idea of not religion, but their idea towards like
Buddhism.
everything, but yeah, religion. What's the word there? Superstitions. There you go. Their superstitions, say for instance, Far East, when I'm talking China and Japan and those types of cultures. Have you ever managed to get in contact with anybody who is from a culture like that, with their beliefs towards it all?
Yes, a good friend of mine, Brandon Hodge, who you guys should get on the show because his
Hmm.
interest is really in other spirit communication devices earlier, and that hits the wonderful thing about death is, like you said, it's kind of explored by and expressed by all cultures, and they all have a different view and use different tools to do it, and so in China we see different forms of spirit communication. In
Yeah,
Japan, we have Kokori, which is their version of the Ouija board, and the planchette automatic writing was used
yeah,
very early in China. So yeah, I mean, you have to look at it. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and so looking at the Ouija board through today, it's like a straight line back. Oh, it's demonic, it's horrible, it's whatever. But if you were coming through it, it went through some interesting changes, as well as every culture sees death
yeah.
differently. You know.
Well, just a quick one, right? With regards to China, the reason they haven't got a Ouija board is I think they've got over 20,000 characters in their language.
It's a
Can
little
you
tough.
imagine?
Yeah, that would
That'd
be a
be
little tough.
you'd literally be driven down the road with a glass. They think it's got your name.
Biggest Ouija board ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to buy. It'd be like one of those things you buy in a magazine in installments, like 12
Yeah,
weeks of
exactly.
installments for one board and loads
It's
of
it's
ink.
just like
To be fair.
it just keeps unfolding. It's like the centerfold. Um,
Yes, it's gone past. Yes, it's gone to
yeah.
letter. Oh crap! We
Yeah,
haven't got that
exactly.
much time left on the planet. But no, I mean, is there something? Have you ever caught anything? I know what you're saying yourself. It's an experience, and it's not that it's you should ever class it as proof. But have you ever caught anything which you could go as far as saying was funny as hell? Not influential, but just
I,
something that came through and you've gone, oh my god.
I have definitely seen some times where it's people's subconscious. And so I have seen the board tell us things that people don't want other people to know because it's on
Weak
their
people.
mind. And so, that I would tell people, I'd warn people, really clear your mind because things can come
Yeah.
out on the Ouija board that you do not want other people to know about. And then I've seen some things that were clearly, again, like your subconscious. And then I've had times where we just can't, I couldn't explain it. I don't know how it had it. But I've never had an experience of the paranormal of any kind that has made me definitive on anything. I've just had enough experience where I continue to explore. So
Yes.
I'm under that camp. I want to believe. But do I believe yet? No. But I don't disbelieve completely either.
Yeah.
I want to believe. So I keep looking. And I think
So
that's where my interest in Ouija
you're the
boards
same.
started.
You're the same in spiritualism and with regards to the paranormal as Kurt is with absolutely everything in his life. Doesn't know where to eat, doesn't know what he wants for dinner, doesn't know whether to open the curtains. Got a personal favourite one. Doesn't know to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Go, hold on. Back up on. Say that one more time, Bo. I didn't catch that.
You don't know whether to go to the gym.
I did go. I go every day now. Now I go every day. The only thing that wakes me up that and Monster Energy drinks.
Yeah.
And that's the start. I
Yeah.
don't drink alcohol. I don't do any of that. But I love my Monster Energy drinks. So I got to do that in the gym, and then I accomplish my daily thing, and then I can
Oh,
lie on the couch.
I-
Then I
Is
lie on the couch and bug Mo when he's at work.
is Monster and it's too bad Monster Energy Drinks isn't like a sponsor of your show. They would have
no.
loved that plug.
My
Oh,
God.
Like,
that
This is
would be.
and then I
incredible, big.
get up and I'm drinking Monster, and then
Yeah.
I,
Well,
I
you
want
can.
to. I want to create a paranormal magic 8 ball. It's almost like the same thing, and see how if it become and follow the trail of it to see if it starts to
Doesn't
take a dark twist to it.
the London app
it's
that
too
does it?
funny.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah. But we all know which app I hate anyway. Like the Echo Box app. It's just like it's a randomized app.
Oh, I
Yeah.
can't.
Have you seen
Oh.
have you seen the way Monster Energy drink's been classed as demonic by all Christian groups?
Oh yeah, it's great.
How amazing that drink is utterly demonic. Yeah.
Makes every good Christian little boy and girl want to drink it.
Yeah, clearly. They're all just gonna go hardcore and just like drink energy drinks.
This is what I'm talking about right here.
See, look, there's the devil.
There's
the
there's
In a
the
can.
well, that's the fat. That's the fat content. But here's where the let me find this real quick. That's where the M is supposed to be demonic or whatever. I have no. I don't know why. Mark of the devil right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's against the Trinity right there. You know. It's I'm drinking the devil's blood. You know. I don't know.
Right, just one thing, Robert. I'm going to let you know we've got a couple of minutes left before we have to say goodbye. But there's one question before I plug your website for you. There's one question I do have to ask. Right, you have so many boards. You have one special board. You will have one special one.
Do I have one?
No,
Or
you do.
like,
Of course you do. If you collect something, everybody.
You got that. You got
You
your
know,
like Porsche of Ouija
my
board.
I answer this question the same all the time. My favorite board is always the next one that that collect. So it's like children, like no, but it's true. It's like they're children. I love them all, but they're all different.
Good God.
The
That
ones
was good.
the ones that I love, or the ones that I care about the most, that stay in the house with me, that I don't just take pictures of and catalog and put in storage. Those are the ones from the early founders. So the earliest versions and the ones that represent the idea as it was progressing and becoming Ouija, and then the ones from those founders. Those are my I guess favorites or most interesting ones.
Okay.
What's
Go.
Can I quick question too before we end and plug everything you got going on? What's the oldest board that you have right now? That's in either a collection or it's in a museum or anywhere else. What's the oldest?
The oldest board, it's hard. Again, there's only a few of us, a handful of us, that are really trying to track down the dates. And so I have one board that is handmade and seems to be earlier than Ouija. So potentially 1886 to 1890, because those were all handmade. So before Ouija, they were just, people were making these handmade boards. And then I also have what we believe is the precursor to Ouija, which is Charles Kennard and Elijah Bond made a board before it had the name Ouija, and it has good night at the bottom of it, and I own one of those. So that was only made for a couple of months in 1890. So the earliest boards I have are very early from when they came about.
I like. Well, sadly, we are coming close to the close, so we'll do a little bit of plugging. One question, because we've still got like 5 minutes left. I might as well use it wisely. Do you own a board that you will classify as being famous?
Yeah, I mean, some of the boards that I have been given were from descendants of those people. So some of the boards in my collection have a direct connection to the origination of Ouija. And so, yeah, I consider those kind of famous in the Ouija world, but I mean, there's just all kinds of different ways to answer that question. Some of them I get a lot of boards that are sent to me that are haunted, that people say are from different things, and I try to catalog all those. But my favorite ones and the ones I consider the kind of the most interesting are the earliest ones.
Oh, I can imagine. Do you have to insure the collection?
I do. My husband makes sure that I do, because in case anything happens, he wants to retire on an island somewhere.
He wants to be rich. Yeah.
Well,
So yeah. He if anything happens to me, there is going to be a huge fire sale on eBay. So.
Of course. Keep one so that he can speak to you, or at least.
Exactly. He'll probably bury me with and say like, "Here you go."
Yeah, and I've got the final question I've got to ask you is, how the hell do you phone up an insurance company and go, yeah, I want to insure a pile of Ouija boards?
It's a super interesting question. I do help some insurance companies now, so I have helped insure other people's collections, because I know. But what I do is I track. How much is anything worth is how much someone's willing to pay, and so I track how much boards go for very specifically on eBay over 10 years. Or I was a member of eBay since 1997 when it opened, so I can track that. So I can show people here's the high, here's the low. You can pull the mean out of that.
Yeah,
And so again, it's what people find it's worth.
Now, when you phoned up for your insurance with regards to getting them done, be honest, what did you say? I'm looking to insure a big massive collection of Ouija boards.
Exactly, and they thought it was a joke. They were like, ha ha ha, ha click, and then then you have to get the insurance agent to come over, and that's an experience because they're like,
They walk in the room and go, it's boards everywhere.
yeah,
The house
exactly.
is evil. Oh my god, people are
Yep.
hilarious. No, do you know what, right? It's the outsider's view of the board which will ruin and also in the same breath drag the board up.
Yeah.
Only way
Oh
to
yeah,
look at it.
absolutely,
But
absolutely. People just always look at it. So
without negative press, it's not going to get to where it needs to be. As
right,
we know
exactly.
ourselves, if over in America, everyone's got the right to bear arms and everyone wants to own a gun bigger than the next person and everybody likes going to gun ranges and firing them, little do they
Mhm.
realise that these things fire pieces of metal which are potentially made to stop something in its tracks. It's negative, it's horrible, it's a bad piece of engineering. It's a terrible thing, but then again, it hasn't got a good name for it, but everybody wants one.
Yeah,
So it's along the
that's
same
true.
basis.
Well,
The only difference
I,
is it's slightly less harmful to own a
I
Ouija
tell
board.
people all the time, Ouija boards don't kill people. People kill people.
There you go. There
That's
you
kind of how it
go.
works.
It's like
That's
the
perfect
top
right there.
message you've ever heard. You gotta like it. Well, unfortunately, Robert, it is time that we are going to come to a close with regards to the show tonight. It's been an amazing show. Normally, we have nothing but hiccups, problems, issues, not crosswords, but cross wires, and it's been none of that. It's been a smooth show, so I think the boards were well on your side.
Awesome. Thank
Doing
you
well.
so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And for people who want to know more about the Talking Board Historical Society, go to tbhs.org or Google Talking Board Historical Society, and you can learn about all the different directors. Every single person does something different, and you can learn about them. They all have some of them different sites, different things, and you can see what we're doing. Please donate and watch what we're doing and our different stuff. If you want to know more about me, you can go to robertmurch, murch.com, and see what I'm up to and where I'm going to be. And yeah, I can't wait to be on your next show.
Oh,
We'll
that's
see what
awesome.
happens next.
You are coming back because we're going to have to pick on you more with regards to the board. Because by the time you come back, I'll have probably got a disaster story to tell you with regards to a board.
Perfect.
I like the way your website that you've got for yourself. The
It's
website you've got,
cool.
it's like you just
Cool.
appear in the middle. That's amazing. I like
It
that.
it pops. It pops when you
You
open it
got a
up.
pop up.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, unfortunately, right, as I said, what we're going to do is when the show's released, when we get it to podcast, we'll make sure all the links to the websites, both yours and the Society's website, are all up there and ready. And we'll also get the links up onto our Facebook page and Twitter and Instagram as well. But again, thank you very much, Robert. And
Thanks,
it's time
Robert.
for us to go.
Yep.
Thank you guys. Have a wonderful night, you guys.
Hey, have a great one, Murch, man. Thanks again, brother, for coming on, man.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
See you soon now.
All right, see
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, bye.